Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
I accidentally connected to my husband's truck Bluetooth and heard him planning with my sister. Once she signs the house over for the tax benefits, we'll have everything we need to start our new life without that pathetic fool. They laughed. This morning, my phone exploded. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. You know how some memories are burned into your brain, not like a photograph, but like a full movie with sights, sounds, and even smells? For me, that memory is the Costco parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. It was April 16th. The sky was that perfect, boring blue, and the air smelled like hot asphalt and exhaust fumes. I remember the date because the big mortgage payment was due the next day, and I'd just spent the morning balancing our checkbook, feeling that little spark of pride you get when all the numbers line up. Garrett and I were a good team. A financially responsible team. We'd been married for 11 years. He was 37, I was 39. We had a comfortable life in a nice little suburban house with a garden I was ridiculously proud of. Our life was a collection of comfortable, predictable routines. He had his sacred Saturday fishing trips with his buddies, I had my Tuesday evening pottery class, my one little escape where I could be messy and creative. I loved him. I loved our life. I thought it was solid, real, the kind of marriage you build a lifetime on. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew my own sister. That Tuesday, my pottery class was cancelled. The studio's kiln was on the fritz, so they sent us all home at 2:30 in the afternoon. I had this unexpected gift of free time, a blank page in the middle of a busy week. I decided to be a good wife and run our errands. I drove to Costco, humming along to the radio. On my list, toilet paper, a giant bag of coffee beans, and the dark chocolate sea salt caramels that Garrett was obsessed with. I remember thinking how much he'd love that I remembered them. It's the little things, right? That's what they tell you. I found a parking spot way out in the boonies of the lot. I turned off the engine and just sat there for a minute, scrolling through my phone, trying to decide what podcast to listen to on the way home. I tapped the Bluetooth icon on my screen, and a list of available devices popped up. My car, my headphones, and Garrett's F-150. That was weird. A little jolt went through me. Garrett's truck shouldn't be here. He was supposed to be in a big client meeting downtown, a make-or-break deal he'd been prepping for all week. My first thought was, oh, maybe the meeting ended early and he's here surprising me. A hopeful, naive thought. Without thinking, just on instinct, I tapped his truck's name. It connected instantly. And then I heard it. Laughter. It wasn't just any laughter. It was my sister, Brenda. It was her loud, uninhibited, head-thrown-back laugh. The one she only uses when she finds something truly, wickedly funny. It wasn't her polite little giggle she used at family functions. This was real. And a moment later, a man's voice joined in, a low, familiar chuckle. Garrett's. My world stopped. The podcast, the shopping list, the smell of the air freshener hanging from my rearview mirror, it all just vanished. My finger hovered over the disconnect button, but I couldn't move. They were in his truck. Somewhere in this same parking lot. Their voices were so clear, it felt like they were sitting in the back seat of my car. He seriously has no idea, Brenda said, her voice giddy with the thrill of it all. Audrey thinks you're in some stuffy boardroom right now, charming the pants off some CEO. Garrett laughed again. And she thinks you're at home, probably weeding her precious garden for her. God, she's always been so trusting. So predictable. Remember at Trevor's wedding when we almost got caught in the coat check? I stopped breathing. Trevor was his brother. I remembered that wedding. I remembered looking for Garrett for almost an hour, and Brenda saying she hadn't seen him either. I sat there, in my sensible sedan, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I felt like a bug under a microscope. "That was too close," Brenda said, her voice dropping into a more serious, conspiratorial tone. "But it's not going to matter for much longer. Once she signs the house over for the tax benefits, we'll have everything we need to start our new life without that pathetic fool." They laughed. Together. A hearty, genuine laugh filled with shared secrets and cruel intentions. They were laughing at me. Calling me a pathetic fool. My stomach didn't just drop, it disintegrated. It felt like I had swallowed a block of ice. "What about the timeline?" Garrett asked, his voice all business now. "How much longer do we have to keep this charade going?" 3 months, max, Brenda replied, sounding like a CEO herself. "My financial advisor, the one I told you about, said the capital gains exemption works best if we wait until after the next tax filing. Audrey already thinks it makes sense to put the house in your name because of your freelance business situation. God, she's so clueless about money. She trusts you completely. 3 months. I did the math in my head. 97 days. Until the appointment Garrett had scheduled with his highly recommended tax advisor. An appointment he'd been so insistent I attend. I kept listening, paralyzed, as they talked about their future. Their future. A future built on the ashes of my life. They'd been together for almost 2 years. 2 years of stolen moments, secret trips, and lies. 2 years of him coming home to me, kissing me, sleeping next to me, all while he was in love with my sister. My little sister, who I'd helped with her down payment on her first apartment, who I'd held while she cried over her first broken heart. My hands were shaking so violently that my phone slipped and clattered to the floor mat. The Bluetooth connection broke. The sudden, suffocating silence was worse than their voices. I just sat there, staring blankly through the windshield at a woman loading a case of water into her minivan. She had a kid in the shopping cart, whining for a cookie. A normal person, living a normal life, on a normal Tuesday. My normal had just been obliterated. I have no clear memory of the drive home. It's just a blur of traffic lights and street signs that meant nothing to me. I think I passed the little park where Garrett and I used to walk our dog when he was a puppy. I think I passed the Italian restaurant where he proposed to me 13 years ago. The memories felt like they belonged to someone else. The next thing I knew, my car was in our driveway, the engine silent. I couldn't bring myself to get out. I just sat there, staring at the cheerful yellow front door I had painted myself last summer. Our home. The home they were planning to take from me. I was supposed to be a temporary obstacle. A line item in their financial plan. I must have sat there for the better part of an hour. I pulled out my phone and my thumb started scrolling through my camera roll on autopilot. There we were, the 4 of us, me, Garrett, Brenda, and her husband, at last year's 4th of July barbecue. We were all smiling, Garrett's arm around my shoulder, Brenda's arm linked through his. The perfect family picture. A perfect lie. There was another one of Brenda and me at our parents' 40th anniversary party, our heads together, laughing. I remembered that moment. She had just whispered a joke in my ear, something about our dad's terrible dancing. It felt so real, so genuine. How could it have all been a performance? The initial shock began to wear off, replaced by waves of pure, hot rage. It was a physical sensation, a heat that started in my chest and crawled up my neck. I wanted to storm into that house and shatter every single thing that reminded me of him, of them. I wanted to take a baseball bat to his precious truck. I imagined myself calling Brenda, screaming at her until my throat was raw. I pictured waiting for Garrett to walk through that yellow door, the look on his face when I played the recording of his betrayal back to him. I actually unlocked my phone and typed out a message to Brenda. I know everything. You are a disgusting monster. My thumb hovered over the send button. I could end this right now. I could have the screaming match, the dramatic confrontation, the messy, ugly end. But then, their voices echoed in my head again. Pathetic fool. They were counting on me to be emotional. They were expecting tears and accusations. A dramatic scene would be messy, but it would give them the upper hand. They could paint me as the crazy, hysterical wife. They could control the narrative. And while I was falling apart, they would be quietly executing the rest of their plan. They weren't just cheating on me. They were robbing me. Something inside me went cold. The hot rage solidified into something hard and sharp, like a shard of ice. They weren't going to get the satisfaction. They had underestimated me. They thought I was a fool. Fine. I would be the biggest fool they had ever seen. For the next 97 days, I would be the most loving, trusting, perfect wife they could ever imagine. And all the while, I would be building a cage for them, piece by piece. I finally got out of the car. I walked through the yellow door, into the silent house. It felt different now, like a stage set. I went straight to my small home office, sat down in the dark, and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen felt like a spotlight. I started a new, password-protected document. And I began to make a list. A battle plan. 1. Do not confront Garrett or Brenda. Not a word. Not a look. 2. Document everything. Every lie, every late night, every dollar. 3. Forensic audit of finances. Bank accounts, credit cards, investments. 4. Find a lawyer. A shark. Someone completely outside our circle. 5. Secure my personal assets. My inheritance. My personal documents. 6. Act completely, perfectly normal. Be the wife he expects me to be. That last point was underlined. It would be my greatest performance. I created a new, encrypted email account. I found an old burner phone I'd kept from a previous job and charged it. My secret life had begun. The game was on. Waking up the next morning was the hardest thing I'd ever done. For a few beautiful, foggy seconds, my reality was normal. I felt the familiar weight of Garrett's arm draped over me. And then, the memory of the recording crashed down, and the man lying next to me became a stranger, an enemy. I had to physically stop myself from flinching away from his touch. He mumbled a sleepy good morning and kissed my cheek. It felt like being branded. "Hey, could you pick up my dry cleaning after work today?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. The casual intimacy of it, the sheer normalcy, made my stomach churn. This was the suit he'd be wearing while he met with lawyers to figure out how to steal my house. "Of course, honey," I said, my voice a perfect imitation of my normal self. The moment I was out of bed, I ran to the bathroom, turned the shower on full blast to cover the sound, and was violently sick into the toilet. I rinsed my mouth, looked at my pale, shaken face in the mirror, and whispered, "Get it together, Audrey." This became my new ritual. I would act the part of the perfect, loving wife on the outside, while on the inside, I was a general waging a secret war. I started a private journal in my new email account, documenting every interaction, every lie. Garrett said he was working late? I'd log the time. Brenda called to say hi? I'd transcribe the conversation, analyzing every word for hidden meanings. On day 7, I officially named my plan, Operation Don't Be a Pathetic Fool. The first phase was reconnaissance. The next day, I called in sick to work, claiming a migraine. The second Garrett's truck pulled out of the driveway, my mission began. I started in his home office. It felt like a monumental violation of privacy, but I reminded myself, he had already burned that bridge. I was just collecting the ashes. It didn't take long. In the back of his filing cabinet, tucked inside a folder labeled Old Tax Returns, I found it. Statements for a secret bank account. I sat on the floor, my heart hammering, as I read through them. For the last 18 months, he had been making regular, small transfers from our joint savings account. $200 here, $300 there. Small enough to go unnoticed in the day-to-day shuffle of bills and expenses, but they added up to nearly $40,000. $40,000 of our money, our future, squirreled away for his new life with my sister. Then I checked his workout bag in the closet. Tucked into an inside pocket was a cheap burner phone. It was password protected, of course. But Garrett was a creature of habit. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. I tried our dog's birthday. Nothing. Then I tried Brenda's birthday. It opened instantly. The texts were all there. Years of them. Plans, pet names, pictures that made me feel sick all over again. I took photos of every single screen with my own burner phone until my hands were numb. I put the phone back, put the bank statements back, and made sure everything looked exactly as it had before. That afternoon, I had my first meeting with Ms. Davenport. I had found her through a series of careful, indirect referrals. She was a divorce lawyer in a town an hour away, a woman with a reputation for being meticulous and utterly ruthless. She was in her 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I sat in her plush leather office chair and told her everything, my voice surprisingly steady. I laid out the story, the Bluetooth call, the bank account, the burner phone. She listened without interruption, her fingers steepled under her chin. When I was finished, she was silent for a long moment. "They think they're clever," she finally said, her voice calm and cutting. "But clever people, greedy people, always get sloppy. They've given you a gift, Audrey. The gift of time. Our job is to use it. You will continue to be the perfect, unsuspecting wife. You will not show your hand. The moment they know you know, they'll accelerate their plans, they'll start hiding assets, they'll lawyer up and things get messy. We need to be 10 steps ahead. We're not just going for a divorce, we are building a case for a settlement so overwhelmingly in your favor that he won't have a choice but to sign it." She used words like discovery, assets, and deposition. She explained the legal process, the importance of a clean chain of evidence. I left her office feeling powerful. For the first time since that day in the Costco parking lot, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a strategist. The 97-day countdown wasn't a prison sentence anymore. It was a deadline. Playing defense wasn't enough. I couldn't just sit back and collect evidence of their past sins, I had to actively shape the battlefield. I needed to lead them deeper into their own delusion, to make them so confident in my ignorance that they'd hand me the rope to hang them with. My acting skills, it turned out, were better than I ever imagined. About a month into my silent operation, I set my first trap. It was a quiet Wednesday evening. We were eating dinner, the TV murmuring in the background. Garrett was complaining about a new business expense, a classic lead-in to talking about how tight money was. It was the perfect opening. I put down my fork and looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "You know, honey," I said, my voice laced with gentle concern. "I was reading this article on a finance blog today. It was talking about tax strategies for couples where one person has a small business, like you do." I saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Oh yeah? What did it say?" "Well, it was pretty complicated," I said with a little, self-deprecating laugh. "All about capital gains and tax liabilities. But the gist was that it can sometimes be a huge advantage to have the primary residence, you know, the house, solely in the name of the business owner. It said it can protect the asset and offer significant tax benefits, especially when it comes to a future sale." I let that hang in the air. I could almost see the gears turning in his head. He was trying so hard to look casual, to act like this was brand new information. "Ha," he said, picking up his fork again. That's actually really interesting. My accountant mentioned something vaguely similar a while back. Maybe that's something we should actually look into." It could be a really smart move for our financial future. Our financial future. The lie was so effortless for him. Maybe, I said with a shrug, as if the thought was already leaving my mind. Just something I saw. The seed was planted. And he thought it was my idea. The next weekend, when we were at a barbecue at her house, Brenda brought it up in front of everyone. "Oh, Audrey, Garrett was telling me about that brilliant tax idea you had about the house. You're so smart with that stuff," she gushed, squeezing my arm. I smiled back at her, a perfect, warm smile. "Just trying to look out for our family," I said. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. My next trap was designed to test their greed. I knew Garrett felt the pinch of the money he was secretly funneling to his separate account. I wanted to dangle a bigger prize in front of him. I spent an evening creating a fake email chain. I invented a fictional law firm and a recently deceased, distant great-aunt from my mother's side of the family. The emails were perfect, full of legal jargon about probate, estate settlement, and a modest but significant inheritance that was coming my way. I left the email chain open on our shared iPad on the kitchen counter, as if I'd been interrupted while reading it. It took less than an hour. Garrett came into the kitchen to get a beer. I saw him glance at the iPad. He stood there for a full 5 minutes, pretending to be looking for something in the fridge, reading the entire thing over my shoulder. That night, in bed, he was suddenly very interested in my family tree. "Hey, whatever happened to your mom's Aunt Mildred? The one who lived in Oregon?" I pretended to think. "Aunt Mildred? Gosh, I don't know. I think she passed away years ago." "Why?" "Oh, no reason," he said smoothly. "Her name just popped into my head." Over the next few days, he started talking about our future in grander terms. He talked about renovating the kitchen. He talked about taking a trip to Europe. He even started looking at new, more expensive trucks online, leaving the browser tabs open for me to see. He was already spending my fake inheritance, money he planned to enjoy with my sister. The hardest part was maintaining the physical side of our marriage. There were nights he would reach for me, and I would have to force myself not to recoil. I developed a technique. I would focus on a tiny crack in the ceiling above our bed. I would trace its path with my eyes while he was touching me, my mind a million miles away, going over my checklist, planning my next move. He thought these were moments of intimacy. They were moments of espionage. He was sleeping with the enemy. He just didn't know he was the enemy. Living a double life is exhausting. The constant vigilance, the mental gymnastics of keeping your stories straight, the sheer effort of smiling when you want to scream, it wears you down. The most draining moments were the social ones, the times I had to perform my role not just for Garrett, but for an entire audience. About 2 months into the countdown, Brenda, in her infinite capacity for cruelty, suggested a dinner party. "Just a small get-together," she chirped over the phone. "Me, you, Garrett, and Cheryl. It's been too long since we all just hung out." Cheryl. She was a mutual friend, someone I'd known since college. But for the last few months, she'd been different with me. Overly solicitous, avoiding my eyes, always asking if I was really okay with a sad, pitying look. I suspected she knew. This dinner was my chance to confirm it. "What a wonderful idea, Bren," I said, my voice dripping with fake enthusiasm. "I'd love that. I'll make my famous lasagna." The evening was a masterclass in passive-aggressive tension. I felt like I was in a stage play where only I knew the real plot. Garrett and Brenda were disgustingly chummy, finding constant excuses to be near each other. A hand on his back as she passed by. A shared, secret smile over a joke no one else got. They were so brazen, so confident in my ignorance. Cheryl, on the other hand, was a nervous wreck. She barely ate, jumping at every loud noise and spilling her wine twice. I decided to be the perfect hostess. I kept the conversation light and, most importantly, I kept the wine flowing. I knew a drunk tongue tells the truth. After dinner, Garrett and Brenda announced they were stepping onto the back patio for some fresh air. Neither of them smoked. They just wanted a moment alone. This was my opening. The moment the sliding glass door clicked shut, I turned to Cheryl. I refilled her wine glass to the brim. "Isn't it great to see them so happy?" I said, my voice soft and friendly, nodding towards the patio where I could see their shadowy figures standing a little too close. Cheryl looked at me, her eyes wide and confused. "Who?" "Garrett and Brenda," I said, my smile unwavering. "They just have this incredible bond, don't they? I mean, it's not every man who gets along so well with his sister-in-law. It's really special." The color drained from her face. It was like watching a light bulb go out. She knew. I could see the panic, the guilt, the frantic search for the right words in her eyes. "Oh, yeah," she stammered, fumbling with her napkin. They're great friends. Really great." I just kept smiling. "I'm so lucky," I continued, twisting the knife just a little. "To be surrounded by people I can trust completely. My husband. My sister. My best friends. It's all anyone could really ask for, right?" Cheryl looked like she was about to be sick. She mumbled something about needing to use the restroom and practically fled the table. Confirmation received. The betrayal wasn't a secret between two people. It was a conspiracy. A club, and I was the only one who wasn't a member. Later, as I was walking Cheryl to her Uber, she grabbed my arm. "Audrey," she whispered, her words slurring slightly. Are you really okay?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I've never been better, Cheryl. Thanks for asking." The guilt on her face was my reward for a night of agonizing performance. When I went back inside, Garrett was waiting in the kitchen. He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist as I started clearing the plates. "That was a fun night," he whispered into my hair. "Brenda and I were just talking on the patio about how amazing you are, putting all this together." I leaned back against him, a silent, hollow shell. "I'm glad you had a good time, honey." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. That night, I barely slept. The exhaustion was bone deep. I felt utterly, completely alone. As the days turned into weeks, my folder of evidence grew. I had screenshots, photos of bank statements, a log of every lie. But I was still missing what Ms. Davenport called the smoking gun, something so undeniable, so damning, that it would leave them with no room to maneuver. I had a strong suspicion where I could find it, on our shared home computer. Garrett was sloppy with his digital life. He used the same password for everything and thought that dragging a file to the trash bin meant it was gone forever. But I wasn't a tech expert. I needed help. I couldn't risk hiring a professional PI, so I turned to the only person I knew who wouldn't ask too many questions, my work colleague, Kevin. Kevin was the quiet, unassuming guy in the IT department who everyone went to when their computer was on the fritz. He could work miracles. I approached him at work one afternoon, carefully arranging my face into an expression of mild panic. "Kevin, I am so sorry to bother you," I began, my voice trembling just a little. "But I think I've done something truly terrible. I was trying to clean up our old family computer at home, delete old files to free up space, and I think I accidentally deleted a whole folder of my mom's photos. Photos from before she passed away. Garrett will be devastated. He doesn't know I was even messing with it." Kevin, being the kind soul he was, immediately looked sympathetic. "Hey, don't panic, Audrey," he said reassuringly. "Most of the time, deleted files aren't really gone. Bring the computer tower in this weekend. I do data recovery as a side hustle. If the files are still on the drive, I can probably get them back." The following Saturday, while Garrett was on his monthly fishing trip with the guys, I loaded the heavy computer tower into my car and drove it to Kevin's apartment. The entire weekend was agonizing. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I just kept pacing around my house, waiting for his call. Finally, on Monday morning, he motioned for me to come over to his desk at work. He had a strange look on his face, a mix of pity and shock. "Well," he said, his voice low so no one else could hear. "I recovered your mom's photo folder." "No problem." He paused. "But, Audrey, I also recovered a lot of other things. Things that were in the trash bin. I think you need to see this." He turned his monitor towards me. And there it was. My entire world, burning down in high resolution. He had recovered hundreds of deleted messages between Garrett and Brenda. Explicit photos that made me want to vomit. But that wasn't the smoking gun. He clicked open a document. It was a meticulously organized spreadsheet. The file was titled, Financial Plan Post A. My name wasn't in it. I was just A. The spreadsheet was a detailed timeline and budget for their new life together. It had line items for asset liquidation, A's retirement fund, sale of primary residence, and legal fees, contingency for A's potential protest. It even had a budget for a trip to Hawaii to celebrate once the divorce was final. But the real kick in the gut was a note in a comment cell, attached to the line item about transferring the house deed. It was written by Garrett. It read, "Need to finalize transfer from the current obstacle by end of Q2 to avoid tax penalties." The current obstacle. 11 years of marriage. A lifetime of sisterhood. All of it, reduced to an obstacle to be removed. Kevin saw the look on my face. "Audrey. I am so sorry." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen. This wasn't just a betrayal of the heart anymore. This was a calculated, premeditated financial and emotional assassination. He also found their shared Amazon wish list, which was still active. It was titled Our New Place. It had everything on it, from a brand new sectional sofa to a fancy espresso machine. The most twisted part? Some of the items, like a set of expensive kitchen knives, were things I had wanted for our house for years, but Garrett had always vetoed, saying they were a waste of money. Apparently, they weren't a waste of my money. I had Kevin copy every last file onto a new, encrypted flash drive. I took it from his hand, my own hand trembling slightly. "Thank you, Kevin," I whispered. "You may have just saved my life." I walked back to my desk, the small flash drive feeling as heavy as a brick in my pocket. The pathetic fool was gone. The victim was gone. All that was left was the obstacle. And this obstacle was about to become a goddamn wall. Holding that flash drive in my hand changed everything. The emotional fog I had been living in for over 2 months finally burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. The anger and grief were still there, of course, but they were no longer overwhelming. They were fuel. It was time to stop gathering intelligence and start preparing for extraction. My first move was to quietly and methodically remove every item of personal value from the house. I started with the small things. My grandmother's engagement ring, which was my only real piece of family inheritance. The box of old photo albums from my childhood, filled with pictures of a smiling, innocent girl who had no idea what was coming. My personal financial documents, my passport, my social security card. I bought a stack of moving boxes from Home Depot, telling Garrett I was finally getting serious about that decluttering project I'd been talking about for years. "That's great, honey," he said, completely oblivious. "Our house has gotten so cluttered. Let me know if you need help moving anything heavy to the garage." He had no idea he was helping me erase myself from his life, one box at a time. My brother, Leo, was my silent co-conspirator. I never told him the full story, not yet. I just told him things at home were complicated and I might need to crash with him for a while. He didn't push for details. He just cleared out his spare room and texted me, "Your sanctuary is ready whenever you are." Every few days, I'd drive over to his place with another carload of boxes, which we'd stack in his garage. We'd share a pizza on the hood of my car, talking about everything and nothing. His quiet, unquestioning support was the one thing that kept me sane. The final week before the tax appointment felt surreal, like the last few minutes of a movie before the big climax. Every interaction with Garrett was freighted with meaning. Every word, every touch, was the last of its kind. On day 94, just 3 days before the end, he announced he was planning a special date night for us. Just because, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind while I was washing dishes. I feel like we've been a little distant lately. I want to take my beautiful wife out to a nice dinner. We need to reconnect before we make all these big financial decisions. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost pathetic. This was his final performance, the last push to make sure the dumb, loving wife was primed and ready to sign away her future. I agreed, of course. I even suggested we go to our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where we'd celebrated so many anniversaries. The dinner was an out-of-body experience. He held my hand across the checkered tablecloth. He told me I looked beautiful. He toasted to us and our future, talking about growing old together in our house. He was the perfect, charming husband. He was also a sociopath. I smiled, I laughed in all the right places, I played my part. All the while, I was mentally running through my D-Day checklist, making sure every detail was in place. That night, he initiated intimacy for the last time. I let him. I felt like an actress on a closing night, giving my final performance. I lay there in the dark afterwards, his arm draped over me, his breathing slow and even as he slept. You know, he whispered into the darkness, thinking I was asleep. That appointment next week, it's going to be so good for us. It's going to secure our future. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there in the dark, my face turned away from him, and I smiled. He had no idea how right he was. It was going to secure a future. My future. I was awake long before the alarm went off on day 97. I lay in bed and watched the first pale, gray light of dawn seep through the blinds. This was it. The last day of my old life. My stomach was a knot of nerves, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. It was the feeling an athlete gets before the starting gun fires. I got up quietly, went downstairs, and made coffee, just like I did every other morning. I sat on our back deck, the one Garrett had built, and watched the neighborhood wake up. A dog barked. A car started. The world was moving on, completely unaware that my personal world was about to undergo a controlled demolition. At 7:30, Garrett's alarm blared. He shuffled into the kitchen a few minutes later, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He kissed my cheek, a casual, familiar gesture that felt utterly alien. Morning, he mumbled. Don't forget, we've got that important tax appointment at 2 o'clock. I turned from the counter, holding a fresh cup of coffee out to him. Morning, honey. I haven't forgotten. I paused, then delivered the first calculated move of the day. Actually, about that. Something just came up at work. A client had a last-minute crisis, and my boss needs me for a quick meeting this afternoon. I'm so sorry, but I might be a few minutes late. I watched his face carefully. I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, the fear that his perfectly laid plan was about to be disrupted. He quickly masked it. Oh. Well, should we reschedule? It's pretty important. No, it's fine, I said, waving my hand dismissively. It shouldn't take more than half an hour. Why don't you go ahead to the appointment, and I'll just meet you there? It'll save us having to drive together anyway. The relief that washed over his face was so obvious it was almost comical. His plan was still on track. The dumb, accommodating wife was making it even easier for him. Okay, yeah, that works, he said, his good mood instantly restored. Just don't be too late. They charge by the hour. He left for his own morning appointments at 9:15. I stood at the window and watched his truck pull out of the driveway. I saw him pick up his phone as he drove, no doubt texting Brenda the good news: everything is proceeding as planned. The moment his truck turned the corner at the end of our street, my house transformed from a home into a command center. I moved with a speed and efficiency I didn't know I possessed. First stop, the bank. Not our local branch, but a larger one in the next town over where I had already opened a new account in my name only. I walked in and deposited a cashier's check from the sale of my old convertible, the little sports car I'd owned before we were married, which I had recently sold. Garrett had always hated that car. It felt fitting that it would be the first deposit into my freedom fund. Second stop, Ms. Davenport's office. She had the final stack of documents waiting for me on her gleaming mahogany desk. The divorce filing. Affidavits. Motions to freeze our joint assets. I signed each one with a steady hand. With each signature, I felt a layer of grime being scrubbed from my soul. When I was done, she handed me the original flash drive full of evidence. "Are you ready for this, Audrey?" she asked, her sharp eyes searching mine. "Once we file this, there is no going back." I looked at her and gave her a small, firm nod. I've been ready for 97 days. By 11:30 a.m., I was pulling up to my brother Leo's apartment. He opened the door before I even knocked. He looked at my face, then at the single overnight bag in my hand, and just nodded. "Come on in," he said. I walked into his spare room, my new sanctuary, and dropped my bag on the floor. I took out my laptop, sat down at the small desk he had cleared for me, and opened the final file. It was titled D-Day Checklist. 8 steps to reclaim my life. The time for acting, for waiting, for hiding, was over. It was time to burn it all down. Sitting at that little desk in Leo's spare room, with the muffled sounds of city traffic outside, felt like being in the eye of a hurricane. It was calm, focused, while I knew all hell was about to break loose. I took one last, deep breath and began to execute the final phase of my plan. Step 1, the email. I opened my draft folder. The email, which I had rewritten at least 20 times with Ms. Davenport's guidance, was ready. The subject line was simple: some difficult personal news. It was addressed to a carefully curated list of 14 people: my parents, Garrett's parents, our siblings, including Brenda's husband, and our closest mutual friends. The email was factual, not emotional. It stated calmly that I had filed for divorce due to Garrett's long-term affair with my sister, Brenda. I attached 2 small, irrefutable pieces of evidence: a single bank statement from his secret account showing a transfer from our joint savings, and one screenshot of a text message from him to Brenda that read, "Can't wait until the obstacle is gone and we can be together for good." I ended the email by asking for privacy and understanding. My finger trembled for a second, then I clicked send. The first domino had fallen. Step 2, the digital break. I opened Facebook. I changed my relationship status from married to single. I didn't add any dramatic post, just the simple, cold change of status. Then, I unfriended and blocked both Garrett and Brenda. I did the same on every other social media platform. It was a digital amputation. Step 3, the friends. I composed a short group text to our wider circle of friends, the ones we went to Super Bowl parties with. They deserved to hear it from me, not through the gossip mill. The text was simple: just wanted to let you guys know that Garrett and I are splitting up. I found out he's been with Brenda for years. This is obviously very difficult, so please respect my privacy. I value all of your friendships. My phone immediately started buzzing with replies, but I ignored them. Step 4, the parents. This was the hardest part. I owed my parents a phone call. I braced myself and dialed. The conversation was short, brutal, and heartbreaking. My father went completely silent. My mother just kept repeating, "Oh, Audrey, oh, no." I told them I was safe and that I loved them and that I would explain more later. I could hear the shattering of their world through the phone line. Step 5, the money. I logged into our joint bank account one last time. I initiated a transfer for exactly half of the remaining balance into Garrett's primary checking account. In the transaction memo, I wrote, "You're half of the assets. Goodbye." Then, I transferred my half into my new, secure account. The financial cord was cut. Step 6, the husband. The clock on my laptop read 1:45 p.m. 15 minutes before the fake appointment. It was time. I sent the text I had memorized. Garrett, I know everything about you and Brenda. I have known for 97 days. Do not go to the tax advisor's office. There is no appointment. The man waiting for you there is a process server with our divorce papers. The house transfer you were expecting is not happening. All of our joint assets have been frozen by my lawyer. Your things are at the house. I am not. Goodbye. Step 7, the sister. Her text was shorter, sharper. Brenda. Hope he was worth destroying our entire family over. Check your email. Everyone you have ever known now knows exactly what you are. Step 8, the silence. I took my phone, the burner phone, and my laptop, and I turned them all off. Completely off. For the next 6 hours, I was gloriously, blissfully unreachable. Leo, my incredible brother, understood I needed a distraction. We ordered a giant, greasy pizza and played Call of Duty like we were teenagers again. We didn't talk about Garrett. We didn't talk about Brenda. We just existed in a bubble of normalcy, and for the first time in 3 months, I felt like I could actually breathe. If you're still listening, please do me a favor and like this video, and comment the number 1 down below. That way, I'll know you gave me a like, and I'll know you're right here with me on this journey. Your support means the world to me and keeps me going. So please, comment the number 1 and listen to what happened next. At precisely 8:17 p.m., I decided it was time. I picked up my phone, my heart starting to pound again, and I pressed the power button. It came back to life with a vengeance. It vibrated so hard it nearly jumped out of my hand. The screen lit up with a tidal wave of notifications. 42 missed calls. 16 voicemails. 93 text messages. It was a digital apocalypse. 23 of the calls were from Garrett. 11 were from Brenda. The voicemails were a chaotic symphony of their downfall, Garrett, at first angry and confused, then sobbing incoherently, then screaming that I had ruined his life. Brenda's were just pathetic, tearful pleas. The texts were a dumpster fire of desperation and rage. The war was over. All that was left was to survey the wreckage. For 2 days, I let them stew. I blocked their numbers and communicated only through Ms. Davenport. The flood of messages from friends and family, however, was overwhelming. Most were supportive, shocked, and horrified on my behalf. A few tried to play neutral, but they were the minority. The story, in its brutal, simple truth, was out. But I knew I couldn't hide forever. And a part of me needed to see it. I needed to see the look on his face, not for revenge, but for confirmation. Confirmation that the man I had married was truly gone, replaced by this sniveling, pathetic creature. I unblocked Garrett's number and sent him a simple text, Starbucks on Elm Street. 1 hour. Come alone if you ever want to speak to me again. He replied in seconds, I'll be there. I chose our location carefully. It was public enough to prevent a scene, but busy enough to give us anonymity. I got there first and chose a small table in the back corner. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked like he hadn't slept or showered in days. His face was pale and puffy, his eyes were bloodshot. He looked broken. Good. He practically fell into the chair opposite me and started talking before I could even say a word, his voice a hoarse, desperate whisper. Audrey, thank God. You have to listen to me. This is all a huge misunderstanding. It wasn't what it looked like. Brenda, she was going through a hard time, I was just trying to be there for her. It got out of hand. You have to believe me, I never stopped loving you. He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled it away as if his touch was toxic. You violated my privacy, Audrey, he said, his voice shifting to wounded accusation. Going through my things, my messages. How could you do that to me? I just stared at him, my expression blank. I let him talk, let him spin his web of lies and half-truths. He blamed Brenda. He blamed me. He blamed his job stress. He painted himself as the victim, a good man who had made a simple mistake. When he finally ran out of steam, his pathetic excuses hanging in the stale, coffee-scented air between us, I asked him one simple question. When did it start, Garrett? He flinched. I don't remember exactly. Try, I said, my voice as cold as steel. He hesitated, then finally mumbled, about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. But it wasn't serious at first. It just happened. It just happened, I repeated, letting the words sink in. For 3 years. I reached into my purse and pulled out my old burner phone. I didn't need to say a word. I just navigated to the audio file and pressed play. Our small corner of the coffee shop was suddenly filled with the sound of his voice, and my sister's, clear as a bell. Once she signs the house over for the tax benefits, we'll have everything we need to start our new life without that pathetic fool. Their shared, cruel laughter echoed from the tiny speaker. A woman at the next table glanced over at us with a curious frown. Garrett's face went completely white. It was the color of chalk. He looked like he had seen a ghost. The ghost of the man he used to be, maybe. I know everything, Garrett, I said, my voice low and steady. I know about the secret account. I know about the financial plan you made. I know you called me an obstacle. I've known for exactly 97 days. Every lie you told, every dollar you moved, I have a record of it. Your performance as a loving husband was very convincing. But my performance as a pathetic fool was better. He started to cry then. Real, racking sobs. He begged. He pleaded. He said he would do anything to make it right. He asked if there was any chance we could go to counseling, if we could try again. I looked at this weeping stranger, this man who had conspired with my own sister to leave me destitute, and I felt absolutely nothing. The love had been so completely burned away that not even ashes remained. The divorce papers are filed, I said, my voice flat. The terms are generous, considering the circumstances. I suggest you sign them. Fighting this will only make the evidence I have public record, and it will cost you a lot more than just your dignity. I stood up from the table. He grabbed my arm, his face a mess of tears and desperation. Audrey, please, where are you staying? Just tell me you're safe. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. You lost the right to ask me that a long, long time ago. I pulled my arm free and walked out of the Starbucks without looking back, leaving him alone with the ghost of our marriage. Confronting Garrett felt like closing a business deal. It was cold, calculated, and necessary. Confronting my sister, that felt like an amputation. After I left Garrett at the Starbucks, Brenda must have gone into a full-blown panic. She started a campaign of harassment. Dozens of calls a day from blocked numbers. Emails from new accounts. She even showed up at my old office, crying to my former coworkers. Finally, she ambushed me at my parents' house. I had gone over to talk to them, to try and explain, and she was just there. Waiting for me. My mom and dad, bless their hearts, just looked lost. They retreated into the kitchen, leaving the two of us standing in the living room of our childhood home, surrounded by pictures of happier times. The moment we were alone, she ran to hug me, just like she had at my brother's place. And just like before, I put my hand up to stop her. "Don't, Brenda." She collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. "Audrey, please," she wailed. "You have to forgive me. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I love him. I couldn't help it." I just stood there, looking at her. My little sister. The one whose scraped knees I had bandaged. The one I had shared a bedroom with for 16 years. We had been inseparable. I remembered one summer when I was about 10 and she was 8. I had saved up my allowance for weeks to buy a special doll I wanted. The day I bought it, she accidentally dropped it and its porcelain face cracked. She was so devastated, so sure I would hate her. I remember hugging her and telling her it was okay, that I loved her more than any stupid doll. Looking at the weeping woman on the couch, I couldn't find a trace of that little girl. "You couldn't help it?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You couldn't help sleeping with my husband for 3 years? You couldn't help planning to steal my home, my savings, my future? Was that an accident too, Brenda? Did you just trip and fall into a conspiracy to ruin my life?" She started making excuses then, her tears turning to anger. It was my fault. Our marriage had been in trouble for years. I was always so focused on my career, so distant. Garrett was lonely. She was lonely. They hadn't meant for it to go this far. She tried to paint it as some kind of tragic, inevitable love story. "It wasn't a love story, Brenda," I said, my voice cutting through her lies. "It was a heist. You sat at my dinner table, you drank my wine, you told me you loved me, all while you were plotting my destruction. Don't you dare try to call that love." Her face hardened. The victim act evaporated, replaced by a bitter resentment. "So what? You're just going to throw everything away? Our whole family? You're tearing this family apart, Audrey. All because you can't forgive one little mistake." That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin of our sisterhood. The complete lack of remorse. The attempt to make me the villain. One little mistake? I repeated, and a humorless laugh escaped my lips. "No, Brenda. I'm not tearing this family apart. I'm cutting out the cancer. You did this. You and Garrett. This is the world you created. Now you get to live in it." I looked at her one last time, this stranger who wore my sister's face. "I want you out of my life," I said, my voice as steady as a rock. "Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to my home. We are done." I walked out of the living room, past my shell-shocked parents in the kitchen, and out the front door into the fresh air. It was a painful, bloody amputation. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was the only way I was going to survive. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics. There was paperwork to sign, movers to schedule, and a new life to build from the ground up. The divorce, thanks to Ms. Davenport's brilliant work and the mountain of evidence I had, was surprisingly quick and clean. Garrett, faced with the threat of having the entire sordid financial plan made public in court, signed everything without a fight. The house sold in less a month. We split the proceeds, I kept my own retirement accounts and my inheritance, and he kept the $40,000 he had stolen. I didn't want it back. It was tainted. I found a small, bright apartment in a part of town I had always loved. It was all mine. The silence was deafening at first, but slowly, it started to feel like peace. I painted the walls a color I loved, bought furniture that was my style, and learned to enjoy the simple pleasure of my own company. News from my old life trickled in through mutual friends and my brother. Garrett and Brenda were officially a couple, living together in a cramped, rented condo across town. Their grand plans for a new house and a life of luxury had evaporated. Apparently, their relationship, born in deception, wasn't faring so well in the harsh light of reality. They had lost almost all of their friends. My parents were civil to Brenda, but their relationship was fractured, perhaps irreparably. They had chosen their sides. As for me, I was healing. It was a slow process, like recovering from a major surgery. Some days were good. I'd go for a long walk, reconnect with an old friend, and feel a spark of my old self. Other days were hard. A song on the radio or the sight of a truck like Garrett's would send me spiraling for a few hours. I even went on a couple of dates, set up by well-meaning friends. They were both disasters. One guy talked about his ex-wife the entire time, and the other one chewed with his mouth open. I decided I was officially on a dating hiatus. I was fine on my own. Last week, I was finally unpacking the very last moving box. At the bottom, wrapped in old newspaper, was Garrett's favorite coffee mug. It was this big, ugly ceramic thing he'd bought on a road trip years ago. It had a huge chip on the handle, but he refused to let me throw it away, insisting it was perfectly good otherwise. I stood there in the middle of my new, sunny kitchen, holding the mug in my hands. I ran my thumb over the chip. And for the first time, I let myself remember. I remembered hundreds of lazy Sunday mornings, him drinking coffee from this mug while we read the paper. I remembered him bringing me coffee in bed in this mug when I was sick. They were good memories. And I realized, with a startling clarity, that they were real. The love, at one point, had been real. It didn't make his betrayal any less monstrous, but it meant my life with him hadn't been a complete lie. Just the ending had. I took the mug, wrapped it carefully in fresh packing paper, and put it in a small box. I drove to the post office and mailed it to his new address. I didn't include a note. There was nothing left to say. It was just one last act of returning something that no longer belonged to me. And that's my story. The story of how I spent 97 days as a ghost in my own life, all to avoid being the pathetic fool they thought I was. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about respect. My own. If you're listening to this, and you're going through your own private hell, I want you to know that you are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think. The storm will pass, and you will find your own peace on the other side. Thank you so much for listening. If my story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like, and maybe share it. You never know who else might need to hear that it's okay to fight for yourself. Stay strong.